The day I buried my wife, I thought the hardest part of my life was over. I stood beside Eleanor Hayes' grave, holding a single white rose as the rain soaked my black dress. 28 years of marriage had ended with a quiet goodbye, leaving me with memories that would stay in my heart forever. Eleanor wasn't just my wife, she was my closest friend, my greatest supporter, and the woman who had taught me what unconditional love looked like. My name is Margaret Hayes, and when I married Eleanor, I also accepted that her teenage daughter, Sophia, came with her. Sophia was 16 at the time, hurt by her parents' divorce and convinced I was trying to replace her father. I never expected her to call me Mom. I only hoped that one day she would accept me as family. For years, I tried my best. I attended every school event, celebrated every birthday, helped pay for her university education, and even gave her money when she started her own business. Whenever she needed help, Eleanor and I were there without hesitation. Although Sophia remained distant, I believed that deep inside she appreciated everything we had done for her. When Eleanor was diagnosed with an aggressive illness 3 years earlier, my entire life became dedicated to caring for her. I learned how to manage her medications, drove her to every medical appointment, stayed awake through sleepless nights, and never left her side during the hardest moments. Sophia visited only occasionally, always saying work kept her too busy. Eleanor never complained. She simply smiled whenever Sophia came by, pretending everything was perfect. After the funeral, family members slowly returned to their own lives. Friends brought flowers and food, offering sympathy before leaving me alone in the quiet house Eleanor and I had built together. Every room reminded me of her laughter. Her favorite blanket still rested on the sofa, and her reading glasses remained on the kitchen counter exactly where she had left them. 3 days later, I heard the front door open. Sophia walked inside carrying a leather folder and wearing an expression I couldn't read. "We need to discuss something," she said flatly. I invited her to sit, assuming we would talk about memorial arrangements or sorting through Eleanor's belongings. Instead, she placed several legal documents on the coffee table. "I've spoken with my attorney," she announced. I looked at the papers in confusion. "About what?" "The house." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" Sophia folded her arms. "This property belongs to me now." I stared at her, unable to process the words. "This is my home." "It was my mother's home," she replied coldly. "It was our home," I whispered. "My mother is gone." The sentence hit me harder than I expected. "I've lived here for almost 30 years, I said, struggling to remain calm. "I helped pay the mortgage. I renovated this house with Eleanor. Every corner of this place holds our memories." Sophia shrugged. "That doesn't matter anymore." I felt tears filling my eyes. "I just lost my wife." "And I lost my mother," she answered without emotion. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she slid another paper toward me. "You have 7 days to leave." I looked at her in disbelief. "You can't be serious." "I've already started the legal process." "This is cruel." "This is business." My voice trembled. Eleanor would never have wanted this. Sophia stood up. "My mother isn't here to stop me." She walked toward the front door before turning back one last time. "If you're still here next week, I'll have the sheriff remove you." The door slammed shut behind her. I collapsed into Eleanor's favorite chair and cried until sunset. Everything I had built over nearly 3 decades seemed to disappear in a single afternoon. Later that evening, while searching through Eleanor's desk for old photographs, I noticed a small wooden box hidden beneath a stack of notebooks. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name written in Eleanor's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Margaret, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I know Sophia better than anyone, and I'm afraid grief may bring out the worst in her. That's why I made arrangements without telling anyone. Olivia Brooks, our attorney, has all the documents you need. Trust her. She knows my final wishes, and she will make sure justice is done. I love you, always. For the first time since Eleanor's death, I felt something other than grief. Hope. Sophia believed she had already won. She had no idea that Eleanor had planned for this moment long before she took her last breath. The next morning, I barely slept. Eleanor's letter rested beside me on the kitchen table, and for the first time since her death, I felt as though she was still protecting me. Her final words echoed in my mind, "Trust Olivia." At exactly 9 o'clock, I arrived at the law office of Olivia Brooks, the attorney Eleanor had trusted for years. Olivia greeted me warmly before leading me into her office. "I've been expecting you," she said gently. I handed her the letter. She smiled sadly. "Eleanor asked me not to contact you unless you came here on your own. She wanted you to discover the truth yourself." My heart raced. What truth? Olivia unlocked a cabinet and removed a thick file labeled the Hayes family estate. There are several documents Sophia has never seen. She placed the file on the desk and opened it. The house was never transferred to Sophia. I blinked. What? Eleanor changed her estate plan 18 months before she passed away. I stared at her in disbelief. But Sophia said everything belongs to her. Olivia shook her head. She only saw an outdated copy of the original will. She slid a new document across the desk. This is Eleanor's final will. With trembling hands, I began reading. Every page revealed another surprise. The family home wasn't left to Sophia. It belonged entirely to me. Not only that, but Eleanor had legally transferred her ownership into a trust months before her death, making me the sole lifetime beneficiary. As long as I lived, no one, not even Sophia, could force me to leave or sell the property. Tears filled my eyes. Eleanor knew this might happen. Olivia nodded. She loved Sophia deeply, but she also recognized how entitled she had become. I kept reading. Sophia would still receive a substantial inheritance, but only if she fulfilled several conditions Eleanor had personally written into the trust. She had to treat every family member with respect. She could not attempt to remove me from my home. She could not challenge the trust through intimidation or fraud. If she violated any of those conditions, her inheritance would be revoked and donated to a charity that supported women battling serious illnesses. I looked up in shock. So, by trying to evict me, Sophia has already violated the trust, Olivia finished. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I didn't feel victorious. I felt heartbroken. Eleanor had predicted her own daughter's betrayal. There's more. Inside were dozens of handwritten letters Eleanor had written during her illness. One letter was addressed to Sophia. My dear Sophia, if you're reading this because you've chosen kindness, I hope you understand why I made these decisions. Margaret stood beside me every single day. She cared for me with love when I couldn't even care for myself. She never asked for anything in return. If you ever force her out of our home, you'll prove you value money more than family, and if that happens, you won't receive my inheritance. By the time I finished reading, tears were streaming down my face. Eleanor hadn't wanted revenge. She wanted fairness. That afternoon, Olivia arranged a formal meeting with Sophia. Sophia entered the conference room confidently, carrying a folder of documents and wearing a smug smile. I assume Margaret is finally ready to hand over the keys, she said. Olivia calmly placed Eleanor's final will in front of her. I suggest you read this carefully. Sophia skimmed the first page. Her smile disappeared. She flipped another page. Then another. Color drained from her face. This can't be real. It is, Olivia replied. My mother promised me everything. No, Olivia answered. She promised you an opportunity to prove your character. Sophia's hands began shaking. You tricked me. No one tricked you, Olivia said firmly. Your own actions activated the clause that revoked your inheritance. Sophia stood so quickly her chair nearly fell over. I'll fight this in court. Olivia remained calm. You are free to try. But your attempt to illegally evict Margaret has already been documented. The trust is extremely clear. Sophia turned toward me, anger burning in her eyes. You planned this. I slowly stood. No, Sophia. I looked directly at the young woman I had spent nearly 30 years trying to love. Your mother planned this because she hoped you would choose compassion. Silence filled the room. For the first time in her life, Sophia realized that greed had cost her far more than money. She had lost her mother's final gift, and perhaps the last chance to keep her family together. Sophia stormed out of Olivia Brooke's office without saying another word. The heavy door slammed behind her, leaving the room silent. I remained seated, staring at Eleanor's final letter. My heart wasn't filled with satisfaction or revenge. Instead, I felt an overwhelming sadness. Eleanor had loved her daughter more than anything, yet she had known this painful day might come. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to a quiet routine. I stayed in the home Eleanor and I had built together, tending to the flower garden we had planted years before. Every morning, I watered the white roses that had been Eleanor's favorite. Caring for them made me feel close to her, as though her love still surrounded the house. Meanwhile, Sophia hired several lawyers, determined to overturn the trust. Each attorney reviewed Eleanor's documents, but every one of them reached the same conclusion. The trust had been written with extraordinary care. Eleanor's wishes were clear, legal, and impossible to challenge. When Sophia finally realized she couldn't win, anger turned into regret. She had lost not only the house but also the inheritance her mother had intended for her. Because she had violated the trust, the money was transferred to a foundation that provided medical care and emotional support for women fighting life-threatening illnesses, a cause that had meant everything to Eleanor during her own battle. News of the donation spread through the community. Friends and neighbors praised Eleanor's generosity, and many made additional contributions to the charity in her memory. Her legacy became one of compassion instead of conflict. Nearly 2 months later, there was a knock at my front door. When I opened it, Sophia stood on the porch. She looked completely different. The confident woman who had ordered me out of my own home was gone. Her eyes were red from crying, and she held no legal papers, only a small bouquet of white roses. I know you probably don't want to see me, she said quietly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I stepped aside. Come in. She entered the house slowly, looking around at the familiar rooms. Family photographs still decorated the walls. Eleanor's favorite chair remained beside the fireplace, exactly where she had always kept it. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. I've spent weeks reading Mom's letters, she whispered. She wrote about you constantly. She called you the greatest blessing of her life. She lowered her head. I was so blinded by money that I forgot what mattered. I listened silently. She wiped away her tears. I thought I deserved everything because I was her daughter. I never realized how much you sacrificed for her, or for me. Then, to my surprise, she placed the roses on the table and folded her hands. I'm sorry, Margaret. The words were simple, but they carried genuine remorse. I can't change what I did. I don't expect forgiveness. I only wanted you to know that I was wrong. For a long moment, I looked at the woman standing before me. I remembered the frightened teenager I had met years ago, the young woman I had tried to love despite the walls around her heart. Eleanor always hoped you'd find your way back, I said softly. Sophia began crying again. I wish I had listened to her while she was alive. I reached out and gently held her hand. Your mother believed people could change. Sophia looked at me with disbelief. After everything I've done, can you ever forgive me? I smiled through my tears. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It simply allows us to build a better future. She embraced me tightly, and for the first time in nearly 3 decades, it felt like we were truly family. Months later, we stood together at the charity's annual fundraising event held in Eleanor's honor. Sophia volunteered every weekend, helping women and families facing the same illness her mother had endured. She often told people that losing her inheritance had taught her the greatest lesson of her life. Standing beside Eleanor's memorial garden, I realized that her greatest gift had never been the house or the money. It had been the wisdom to show us that love, kindness, and integrity are the only inheritance that truly lasts. As I placed another white rose beneath Eleanor's photograph, I smiled. She had protected me one final time. And in doing so, she had also saved her daughter.